Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Here on the channel, we are still on a retro kick. For Christmas, I got a 1987 edition of DungeonQuest, and I have been featuring that on the channel recently. And now we're going to take a look at the expansion Heroes for DungeonQuest. This is one of two expansions. The other expansion is the Catacombs. The Catacombs expansion I am not that keen on, and that's probably just as well because it is incredibly rare and incredibly expensive, in the UK at least. But this, Heroes of DungeonQuest, I managed to pick up for a very reasonable price, and I am very happy about that because this expansion does a couple of things. First of all, it gives you 12 characters for the game, and that means 12 beautifully made Oldhammer Citadel miniatures. We're going to take a look at each of those. They are lovely. But they also took the opportunity with this expansion to tidy up a couple of things that are minor issues with the original base game. And we will take a look at those as well. Before we dive into the box though, let's just take a moment to marvel at this box art, which is absolutely incredible. We have all 12 of our new heroes. Here at the back we have Iron Hand the Mighty, who's doing a little dance. This is Thargrim the Chaos Warrior, who appears to have stolen a birdhouse. Maybe next time he goes in he can get a shrubbery to go with that. We have, who else? We've got Helena here, who looks like she has just fought a leprechaun for a pot of gold and lost her trousers in the process. And here's Rildo the Thief, that's Rildo with an R, who could actually well be the leprechaun she's just fought with. This character here, this is Sir Roland, who is supposed to be wearing an animal skin of some kind, but looks a little bit more like he is being devoured whole by a werewolf there. And then up at the top here we've got Vicus the Swordsmaster, who is raging at the castle. And then we have Azoth the Faceless, who, for reasons best known only to him, has decided to fire a lightning bolt over at the ground over there. Maybe because the only thing he has managed to get out of the dungeon is a chicken leg. But enough about the glorious box art. Let's take a look at what we actually get. The first thing the box includes is a set of combat cards. There are 3 combat cards with artwork for monsters and 3 combat cards with artwork for heroes. And the intention with these is you replace the tokens from the base game with them. I mentioned this in my video breaking down the contents of the box. The base game has tokens for every single character and every single monster, and it doesn't really need all those tokens because they are functionally the same. The intention is you will have a set of 3, your opponent will have a set of 3, you both pick one in secret, you reveal them at the same time, and the various different combinations of cards will result in different combat outcomes. That whole system is still intact here, but it has been refined and enhanced by replacing all those tokens with these 2 sets of cards. And the idea here is you use the cards exactly as you would have used the tokens. Say for example we are having a combat encounter with a troll. The player controlling the troll has picked Leap Aside, I have picked Slash. All we do now is we refer to the little charts on the cards and we can see exactly how that combat encounter unfolds. So down here we look at our opponent's choice, which is Slash, and it says you lose 1 life point. So the player controlling the troll knows that the troll will lose 1 life point. And of course, over here, if we look at Leap Aside, it says monster loses 1 life point. So we can see that the charts marry up and both player knows exactly what happens in this particular combat encounter. That's useful because it speeds things up. It also helps because when you are choosing which card to play, you can always look at that card and see a little chart at the bottom that will tell you what the possible outcomes of that selection are. If there are any downsides to the new cards, it's that you don't get unique artwork for each character and monster anymore, but of course that isn't necessary, and the cards are a lot thinner and more fragile than the tokens were. But I think those are minor concessions to speed up the whole combat process and make it a little bit more fluid. The second improvement is that you get a new set of cards for the rings that came in the base game. Originally those rings were presented by small tokens. We now have cards. The benefit here is they're a little bit larger and you have the rules for the card printed on the reverse. That's just a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier to use, and when you are deciding which ring you want, you have all the information right there in front of you rather than having to keep flicking back through the rulebook. Furthermore, you also get 4 new rings, and these are pretty good. In fact, I would say 3 of them are better picks than the original rings. The first ring is teleportation. That ring is only usable if you have the Catacombs expansion because it allows you to teleport out of the Catacombs and back into the normal dungeon. The next one is the luck ring, and with that you get to reroll 1 dice during the game, and that dice can be for anything. That means whether you fumble your jump as you're crossing the bottomless pit, or you draw the giant centipede while you're searching and take a full 12 points of damage, you can pick to reroll that dice and hope for a better result. Of course, you have to accept the second result. The third card is the vision ring, and if you take that ring at one point during the game, when you are searching, you can choose to draw 4 search cards and keep 1. That means you have a really good chance of getting a secret door to get out of a stuck situation. The final ring is the ring of transformation, and that will allow you, when you have drawn a tile from the bag, to put that tile back and draw a different one. If you draw that bottomless pit or that trap that you really don't think you can survive, it can go back in the bag and you can have another try. Really good rings. And whether you decide to pick the rings or randomly allocate them, it's good to have 8 rings in total to choose from. Those are the minor enhancements to the base game that this expansion provides. Let's get to the meat of the product. Let's get to the characters. First of all, you get 3 reskins of characters from the base game. So you get this barbarian, Siegfried Goldenhair, and he is a like-for-like replacement for Ulf Grimhand. You get this absolutely fantastic knight miniature. This is Sir Roland with the big whacking hammer. He is a like-for-like replacement for Sir Rohan from the base game. And then you get Vicus Swordmaster, who is a like-for-like replacement for Volric the Brave. Here are their character cards, and as you can see, they have exactly the same characteristics and exactly the same number of life points as their base game counterparts. So why are they even in the box? I guess it's for 2 reasons. In fact, they do say in the rules book that the main reason these characters have been included is so that if you want to run 2 of the same type of character, you can do. For example, you might be in a situation where you're playing a 2-player game and you both want to use the same character to see how well you can do in a head-to-head situation. You can now do that because you can run 2 identical characters. But I think the other reason, and perhaps the nicer reason, is because it means everybody gets a metal miniature, even if they choose one of the base game characters. Obviously, the base game characters are all in plastic, and while I do really like those plastic miniatures, these metal ones are nicer. If you're playing against people who are using the new metal miniatures, it's nice to be able to have a metal miniature yourself, even if you're using an old favourite from the base game. And I suppose I should point out at this moment, we are handling old Citadel miniatures that contain lead. Don't chew on them. Next up we have Farandil the Elf Ranger, and this is a really nice miniature. I really like this a lot. I don't think he particularly looks like an elf, but I can see myself painting up this miniature and using it in Rangers of Shadowdeep. I like it a lot. And this character is a bit interesting really, because it is pretty much a reskin of the Elf Ranger from the base game of El Adoran. However, this Elf Ranger has 1 less life point. Here's his character sheet. You can see it's actually much longer than the other character sheets, and that's because they have the arrow tracker at the bottom, and all of the characters that have things like arrows or shurikens now have the new longer cards, and it just makes it a little bit easier to keep track of everything. It looks a little bit neater. But we can see that he only gets 10 life points, whereas El Adoran in the base game got 11. And I don't know why this is. I don't know if it's a slight modification because they decided that Eladarin was too powerful, especially when compared to other characters who also had things like arrows. Or perhaps it's just a misprint and they meant to do a like-for-like replacement. The rules do say that Farandil is a like-for-like replacement for the base game character, but he is not. Clearly, if you are going to choose an Elf Ranger, Eladarin is the one to choose. Now we get to the genuinely new characters, and we will start with probably my least favourite of the bunch because he's a little bit uninteresting really. This is Iron Hand the Mighty. Really nice miniature, much nicer than the Pit Fighter that was released for Warhammer Quest many years later. But this is not, for me, a particularly great character. If we look at his character sheet, we can see he has Strength 6, Agility 6, Armor 6, Luck 5, meaning he's pretty average across the board, but he obviously has a lot of life points. He has 19 life points, that's more than any other character in the game. The downside to having all those life points is he isn't allowed to take a magical ring with him, and if you're using the Catacombs expansion, he's not allowed to use amulets from the Catacombs either. And I don't think middling stats across the board and 2 more hit points than Sir Roland or Sir Rohan really is a fair trade for not getting that magic ring or those magic amulets. So instead, let's look at my favourite character of the bunch. This is Thargrim the Chaos Warrior, one of Citadel's classic Chaos Warrior miniatures, and in fact all of these miniatures are basically repurposed from their existing lines. None of these were sculpted specially for the game, to the best of my knowledge at least. And this is just a really cool miniature. I like Thargrim so much, I'm probably going to paint him up relatively soon in order to use him in a playthrough for the channel. And if I do that, I'm probably going to do a similar paint scheme to the Chaos Warriors that I've recently done for Hero Quest, except I'm going to use purple for him. Why do I like him so much? I don't know. Because his agility and luck are really low, and normally I look for characters that have pretty good agility and luck because I think those are the most important stats. We can see here he has Strength 7, Agility 4, Armor 8, Luck 5, so he really is bottomless pit fodder. And his life points are a bit middling as well, he gets 13. But he does get some special rules, and this is something we'll see with all of the other characters in this set. They all get cool special rules. The first thing he gets is the Helm of Terror, which he can use against goblins, trolls, orcs, and the champions of chaos. When he uses the helm, he loses 1 life point as he draws on the power of chaos, and then he rolls a d6 4 times. If he rolls a 13 or more, the monster flees in terror. If it's less than 13, you draw the top monster card and look at the attack heading. If the result is flee, the monster runs away. But if it's a combat result, the monster will damage you while you recover from using the helm, and then you go into a combat situation as normal. Thargrim also has the ability to meditate, where he can give up his turn to recover 1 life point. This is nice but situational. I think if you get a good run of corridors and you're making really good time, it's worth giving up a turn or 2 to meditate. But under normal circumstances, I think the game pushes you so hard and you have to move so quickly, it's probably not going to get a lot of use. Overall, for me, it's the helm that really is a good selling point. That and the fact he's just a really cool miniature. Next up we have Toriyama the Ninja, and this was the only defect really with the set of heroes that I purchased. He is missing a hand. Interestingly, this is not the first of these miniatures that I've seen where this hand is missing. This is actually the third, and I'm assuming there must have been maybe an issue of White Dwarf magazine where they talked about a conversion that involved sawing off his hand, using that sword for something else, or maybe it's just that particular type of sword was hard to find for miniatures back in the day, and people like to cut off this ninja's hand in order to get it. I don't know what the real reason is. I would be interested if anybody can shed any light on why so many of these ninjas are missing a hand. But regardless, I bought a replacement, and this is what he should really look like. It's a big old sword. Here is our ninja's character card, And we can see that his characteristics are pretty poor. He only has strength 4. He does have agility 10, which means things like the bottomless pit aren't going to be much of a challenge, but then he only has armor 4 and his luck is only 5, and he only has 10 hit points. What makes him a really good character is he has some really useful special abilities, and we can see he has a shuriken track at the bottom, and he also has this unusual blowpipe card. The first special ability he has is the ability to hide in shadows. When you meet a monster, you pick a number from 1 to 6, you use a d6 and hide it from everybody else. And then the person controlling the monster will select several numbers. The exact amount they can pick is determined by the monster you are facing. And if they pick a number that matches the number you picked, you are spotted and combat is resolved as normal. If they don't pick the right number, you evade the combat completely and you can continue without having to have a fight. And that's just a really powerful ability because there's not even any penalty for being spotted, you just go into a combat as normal. His second ability is Heightened Senses, which means if you ever draw a sneak attack card, you roll a d6. If you roll an even number, you notice the monster in time and just resolve it as a normal combat without having any penalty for the sneak attack. If you roll an odd number, then the monster gets to do a sneak attack as normal. The Blowpipe card is a once per game item. You can use it in situations where you have met a monster and failed your hide in shadows check. You roll a d12. If you roll a 1, you miss. If you get any other result, you kill the monster unless it's a champion of chaos, in which case the champion loses 4 life points, meaning it's pretty much a guaranteed kill. Finally, you get 4 shurikens. They work pretty much the same as Eladarin's arrows, except you get a different table that you roll on. All in all, just a really good range of powerful special abilities to shore up the fact that your actual characteristics are pretty low. Next up we have Rildo. That's Rildo. Seriously, Rildo with an R. And it's a really nice miniature. Looks a little bit like a hunchback. And I can see myself painting this up to use as civilians in things like Rangers of Shadowdeep. Rildo is a little bit like the ninja in that he excels in certain areas and not in others, and it's his special abilities that will really help him. You can see he's got a strength of 3, agility 9, armor 4, luck 7. He has only 10 wounds, but he comes with 4 daggers. The daggers are interesting because if you want to, you can throw all 4 before a combat starts. You're quick enough just to unleash them one after the other, or you can use 1 per combat round. And when you use them, your opponent will choose a single combat card and you will pick 2 combat cards, and if either choice is the same as the card chosen by your opponent, the dagger hits, causing d6 life points of damage, or slightly less if it's a death warrior, and if your choice is not the same as your opponent's, you lose 1 life point. The downside to this is if you use a dagger in the normal way to resolve a normal combat round, you can only inflict a maximum of 1 life point of damage on a target at any one time. As an added bonus, after the fight, you roll a d6 for each dagger you used, and on an even number, you get it back. And as an extra little bonus, when you search a room, you can actually choose to draw 2 search cards and apply both results. This can be good, it can be bad. Next up, we have one of only 2 female characters in the game. This is Helena the Swift. A nice miniature, hat's a bit big. We can see here that she has a stud on this hand because she would have come with a shield originally. I don't know what type of shield she has, but I have in my possession a small amount of these old Games Workshop shields, and that's perfect. Looking at Helena's character card, we can see she has a strength of 4, an agility of 8, an armor of 5, and a luck of 6, with 12 life points. Not the greatest stats in the world, but she does get 2 special abilities. One is she gets the ability to run, which means if she is carrying 8 or less treasure cards and counters, she is allowed to move 2 tiles instead of 1 if she is moving through tiles that have already been placed. This means she's really quick at backtracking through the dungeon once she has raided the dragon's lair. The downside is, when you do stop in a room, if you get something like a crypt or a dead adventurer or something, you can't stop and search them because you're running really, really fast. You pass by in a blur. and you will also take extra damage from traps. Additionally, Helena comes with a slingshot which has unlimited ammo. She's allowed to use it once in each combat before or after the monster card is drawn. You roll a d10 to see if you hit, referring to a chart in the rules book, and if you do hit, you then roll a d6 to inflict a certain amount of damage. And because there was no d10 in the base game, this expansion does come with a d10 for any rules that require it. Next up we have Phil Maddox the Dwarf, and this is another cool miniature. Phil Maddox is a berserker. His base characteristics are Strength 8, Agility 5, Armor 6, Luck 4, and he has 16 life points. However, if he takes damage, there's a chance he will berserk, and you can also choose to attempt to go berserk. And if you do, you get to use this card to get a whole new set of characteristics. This card will sit over your existing character sheet. And when you do that, you get Strength 11, Agility 6, Armor 6, Luck 3, and 4 extra life points. There are other benefits as well. For example, in a combat situation while you are berserk, any damage you inflict on your enemy will cause double damage. But there are downsides. When you try to go through a door, you don't draw a door card. Instead, you basically headbutt the door and try and destroy it. And you are too enraged to stop to search dead adventurers or crypts, or rooms in general. You're not even allowed to draw treasure counters while you are in the dragon's lair until you have calmed down. This is Cerelia of Zinmandel, the most complicated character in the set. As you can see, she has a little dragon curled around her. And that dragon will come into play during your adventures. This is certainly not a character I would recommend for anybody new to the game because she has a lot of special rules. Looking at her character sheets, first of all you can see her characteristics are Strength 2. She has an Agility of 6, but while Bright Flame the Dragon is with her, her Agility is 9. She also has an Armor of 3, a Luck of 8, but only 6 life points. Her weakness is offset by her Dragon Companion, who has Strength 5, Agility 9, Armor 8, no luck, and 14 life points. Flame Bright is massively useful. When you are moving into an empty square and you're drawing a tile, he will actually attempt to warn you of what's in there. It's a pretty convoluted system where you have to roll a d10 and there's a small chance that he may be wrong about what's in there, but after he's warned you or not, you get to decide whether you want to go into the room or try a different route. You go through the same process again, but if you decide you don't want to go through that route either, your turn is over and you stay where you are. Flame Bright will also try to warn you of trap cards. If you draw a trap card, you roll a d6, and if you roll an even number, Flame Bright warns you and you take no damage at all. If you roll an odd number, you are both affected by the trap, so you both take damage. If you get into a combat situation, Flame Bright will always attack. He isn't going to wait and see what's going on. He's a dragon, he wants to get into the scuffle. He doesn't use combat cards when he attacks, instead he rolls a dice, and the actual dice you use will depend on how many hit points he has left, and your opponent will roll the dice, and whoever rolls the highest wins the round. Furthermore, because Flame Bright, and I know I keep saying Flame Bright, yet it says Bright Flame on his card, but it says Flame Bright in the rules. I think Flame Bright is actually what he's supposed to be called. Regardless, he can't be sneak attacked either because he is always on the lookout and he's always wary of danger. As if that wasn't enough, and I have glossed over those rules a little bit because this video is getting quite long and these rules are quite complicated compared to everything else in the game. It's my least favourite addition to the rules really, because they are so much more complicated than anything else that has been in the game up to this point. But as if that wasn't enough, you also get a healing salve, which is this card here, and the salve will restore all of your life points or 3 of Flame Bright's life points. It's your choice. Furthermore, Cerelia is carrying a sun orb, which always lights her way in the darkness, which means if you ever draw the card that says your torch goes out, you can completely ignore that event. Her orb of light never fails. And this is our final hero. This is Azoth the Faceless, the Chaos Sorcerer. What a truly wonderful miniature. I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. And Azoth is a pretty cool character. His characteristics are naff, but he comes with spells. The characteristics are Strength 1, Agility 4, Armor 3, Luck 6, 14 life points. But he gets a Fireball spell, an Invisibility spell, a Dark Force spell, a Stasis spell, a Warp Door spell, and an Eyes of Doom spell. Dark Force gives you a chance to regain life points. When you use it, you either regain 3 life points, or you can choose to roll a d6 and increase your life points by the total. So you either get a fixed 3 points increase, or you can gamble on getting even more life points back. And that spell is once per game. Next up is Eyes of Doom, which costs 1 life point to use, but it's a really powerful spell for getting you out of combats. When you use it, you will draw the monster card as normal and you will look under attack. If it says flee, the monster runs off. If it says combat, you roll a d10, and if you score more than the monster's number of life points, it flees. If you fail to make it flee, you can still use other spells to finish it off. But of course, you have spent a life point. The next spell is Fireball, which you can use whenever you want, but if you do use it, you will miss your next turn as you recover. The Fireball will kill any monster instantly. The Invisibility spell you can activate at any time for 2 life points. Once you have activated it, on subsequent turns you can choose to spend an additional life point to maintain it, or you can cancel it. And while you're invisible, you just completely ignore monsters. The Stasis spell lets you take extra turns, but each extra turn you take costs you a life point. Finally, there is the incredibly powerful Warp Door spell, which you can only use once per game. When you use it, it lets you walk through a wall as if it is a secret door, but it will also let you walk through the edge of the board, immediately granting you freedom from the dungeon. You don't have to make it all the way back to a tower exit. You can simply make it to the edge of the board and walk out. And that's it. That's our 12 new heroes for Dungeon Quest. The only other things you get in the box are 3 extra cones of Dunshar for tracking things like shurikens, and slaughter bases for all the miniatures. The slaughter bases in my copy are definitely not originals. They are actually dated 92, and I don't believe they're even Games Workshop brand. Whoever was selling the game obviously just chucked in bases because the miniatures would need them. I can't tell you what kind of bases actually came with this originally. The picture on the back of the box shows round bases, so I have to assume that they would have been round bases, although they may have been hexagonal bases. Regardless, I will be mounting mine up on round bases because a lot of these are going to get used in other things, Advanced Hero Quest, Rangers of Shadow Deep, so on and so forth. Phew, this video was supposed to be a quick one, but here we are, we're at the end. I'm really happy to have this in my collection. I love all of the miniatures. I don't love all of the new characters in terms of gameplay. Cerelia's a little bit too complicated. Iron Fist is a little bit boring. But generally, this is a really nice set of extra characters that I am looking forward to getting some paint on eventually. But that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you have really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.